Hi, I'm Cindy Flowers. I am the manager of the St. George Communications Center. We're a consolidated center for Washington County. We dispatch all emergency and non-emergency calls for police, medical, and fire.
My name is Justin Grenier. I'm the assistant manager for the 911 center here in Washington County. And we serve not just the city of St. George, but all the cities and agencies within this county. On the side of the dispatch wall, it says dispatchers save seconds and seconds save lives. Years ago, when I started in 2004, the response times were measured in minutes, 10, 20, 30 minutes. We're down to much less. The technology that we currently have between phone systems, our radio, in-vehicle telematics, everything that we have has constantly decreased our response times such that we are not asking people where they are. We're just asking what's going on and getting them there as quick as possible. And I like to believe that it is making a difference in the field, not just for our first responders, but also for those people that are injured that need help when seconds count. Technology is constantly evolving all the time in what we do. If you think about it in relation to your iPhone or your cell phone, you're swapping that out every year or two, maybe 3 years at the maximum. Well, our technology is evolving similarly, where people expect us to know exactly where they're at, when they pass a certain mile marker, how to find their house, and we're constantly playing catch up. We're constantly evolving our systems to better meet the needs and demands and requirements of the people that we serve.
My name is Mike Higley. I'm a dispatch supervisor. I'm in my 11th year here with the St. George Police Department in communications. Our CAD mapping program, so this is through Motorola. So essentially what we're seeing here is when someone calls in on non-emergency or 911, we add a call with an address and it'll plot on the map. So you can see we have our calls in the general St. George City area. They're currently plotted. We have our officers with their GPS on, so we can see where they're at in relation to the calls. Then we can also click on the calls, get information, and then dispatch the officers according to their assigned areas. We can see specifically where the calls are going to plot. We can guide in officers or firefighters or units if they don't have a heads-up display with their map in their vehicles. So we can guide them in, tell them turn-by-turn locations. So we can also separate our calls by zones so we know which assigned officers go to where. The mapping application is also available in the field, so officers have the ability to see the same exact thing that we do. They can see each other in relation. When their GPS is on, they can see where their calls are, so they can navigate themselves in. If someone needs backup, if something happens where they need fast backup, they can see exactly where they are immediately, so we can get help to them as quick as possible. And the same thing works with the public. When the call appears, officers can see it. It'll chime on their screen, and they can see if something like a cardiac or a drowning or robbery or something in progress comes up, and they'll see that it's close to them, and they can respond immediately before we even get on the air. All right, so this is another mapping application we have. This one is called Command Central Aware by Motorola. This is our 911 mapping application. So when someone calls in on a landline or a cell phone on 911, it'll plot on this map. It'll give us device location with approximation to the device in meters. All right, so we're going to do a test right now. You can see that I picked up the 911 line from Sergeant Bangeter, who just called in on 911. I'll pull over the mapping application. And you can see that it automatically came in with the device location. This is his current cell phone in the dispatch center, right on top of where we're at. So this is accurate within just a few meters. So before someone even starts talking on the phone, we'll have a pretty good idea or general idea of where they're at most of the time with this specific mapping and phone application. All right, we're going to do a live demo of Rapid SOS. This is the third-party vendor that provides this mapping software for us. And essentially works like our Command Central Aware program from Motorola, where when someone calls in on 911, that location data is automatically pushed to us. And what's cool about Rapid SOS is that it is almost immediately accurate. It'll provide the actual address that is closest to once it comes in. So I just hit dial, and I'm already up on the screen, and it's already showing where I'm at before I even answer the 911. So before we even say 911, what is the address of your emergency, we know exactly where you are, where help needs to go, which saves seconds and in turn can save lives. All right, so when the public calls in on 911, most of the time we can get a fairly accurate location from GPS or from our phone system. There's the anomalies occasionally where someone will call on the 911 and we only get the tower location. We've had that situation before where someone's screaming for help and we only know where the tower is, which cannot get us to the person calling or get help there. So it's very imperative and important that someone gives us the address as soon as possible. We know that those situations can be high stress, but that is why we ask for the address first on every phone call and why you should give us the address immediately before tell us what's happening. Because if that line drops, if someone's there preventing you from calling or trying to prevent you from calling, we're not going to be able to find you sometimes. Disconnected cell phones, anything that doesn't have an active service plan, it is law that they have to be able to call 911. We do get a lot of pocket dials, but if you ever find yourself in possession of one of those phones to where you have to call 911 on that specific phone, it will not show up on some of our applications. It does not have a callback number. We cannot call you back. Please stay on the line, verify it was a misdial, or verify that there is an issue and stay on the line the entire time. I would say we actually measured over a 2 or 3 week period, but we had a point where a good 15 to 20% of our 911 calls over a week period were just pocket dials. So please don't let your kids play with the phones. They will call 911. If they hold the lock screen button on some phones for 5 to 10 seconds, it'll automatically call 911. If you put it in your cup holder and it's holding down the lock button, it'll call 911. Apple devices, they have automatic gyroscopes inside that can detect falls or hard falls. It's very common with Apple Watches. They will call 911 if it is waved hard. If you do fall down, it can call 911, which can be important. But if that's something that you feel like you don't need, then I would recommend that you deactivate it. Same thing with Apple phones. If you drop your phone, it'll call 911. Apple is probably our most common pocket dial or open line 911 calls. So it's a very large portion of what we receive here in the 911 center, and it can delay help on real in-progress calls where we have to put other calls on hold to answer the pocket dials that are coming in. So something to be aware of. Also, just with 911 in general, it is for emergencies only. That can be not just life and death, but it can be property. Something's being stolen, a robbery just occurred, someone is actively fighting. It doesn't necessarily have to be life and death, but please only call if it's an emergency. Calling and asking for the non-emergency number is not appropriate. Calling and asking for an update on a case that is no longer in progress is not appropriate. Google's your friend. You can Google whatever non-emergency police number or agency that you need in our county, and it'll get you straight to us.
I'm Jessica. I've been a dispatcher for 10 years. So since we're a consolidated center, we have about 30 lines that we answer. We answer 911s and non-emergency calls, and when the call comes in, it tells us on the screen which line it is that's ringing, and then we answer the phone accordingly. Once the phone rings, if it's 911, we identify it as a 911. We immediately put the address and the call into the system. If it's a medical call or a fire call or a law call, we nature it appropriately and it goes into the system. And then the person who's dispatching the call, it pops up on their screen, and then they will immediately dispatch police, fire, or medical. Our input call to time dispatched should be less than 1 minute. Our goal is to try and do that under 1 minute for all in progress and medical calls. Once we send help, whether it's police, fire, or medical, they respond. We can update them with all of the CAD comments. So as I'm taking a call, I'm typing all of the comments into the call. The dispatcher can see it on their end. They're updating the officer or fire or EMS with all of the comments about what's going on with the call. And then they respond accordingly, whether it's lights and sirens or just a standard response. And then they arrive on scene. We take care of everything. We run everybody involved if it's needed. We advise of any safety alerts that may be associated with the address or the people that are involved. And once the officers clear the scene, we don't typically get a whole lot of closure. That's the one thing that's hardest with this job, is that we don't get a whole lot of closure. Every now and then somebody will call in and let us know how the call went or what actually happened on scene. And most of the time, whatever's happening on scene is not actually what was reported to us. It always kind of varies with with the storyline. But once a patient is transported to the hospital, we don't ever typically find out if that person is okay, what the diagnosis was, if they lived, if they passed away. So once that call is closed out, it's just kind of out of our hands, and what happens.
My name is David Allred. I've been a dispatcher here at St. George Communications for about 7.5 years. I started in September of 2014. I am a certified console trainer, so I help with new dispatchers that we're bringing in and help them with being a dispatcher. We start them off with about 4 to 6 weeks of classroom time where they learn our computer system, maps of the area, the different agencies we dispatch for. We teach them the radio codes, how to talk on the radios, and then we kick them out to the floor. And I get to sit next to a brand new dispatcher, sit right next to them at the console, and I sit with them for anywhere from 2 weeks to about 4 weeks with a couple of breaks in between. And I'm right there with them, coaching them how to talk on the radio, how to send officers to calls, how to page the ambulances and the fire trucks to the different calls that we have. We are about 6 months from hire date to you're out on your own. Again, you've got about 4 weeks of classroom. We usually do about 6 weeks of on the console training where you are talking to the officers, dispatching those calls, paging out the fire trucks, the ambulances, sending them to their calls. Once you're signed off on that, you do that on your own for about 2 months to really get a solid feel and get your own style on how to do things. After that, we kick you back into the classroom for about 2 weeks, and we teach you all of our call taking protocols. Anything from how to walk someone through CPR to a simple citizen assist to a traffic accident, everything that you could think of under the sun. And then you're back out on the console again and sitting with a trainer like myself, and you're taking those emergency and non-emergency lines. And usually, again, we're about 6 weeks out on that. And then you have a little bit of a ghost period where your trainer sits kind of away from you and listens to everything you do and documents all the awesome things you did, and hopefully documents a couple of the mistakes that you made and shows you where you can improve. And then we kick you out on your own, and we call you a full-fledged dispatcher here at St. George Communications.
Awesome. So I'm Angel, and I have been a dispatcher for 2.5 years now, but I just recently came back in October because I just couldn't live without dispatch. I have wanted to be a dispatcher since I was a kid, because whenever I'd watch cop shows, I was always curious about what was happening on the other side of the radio, like the things that we weren't seeing or hearing, because you watch the cop shows and they're getting information, but you're not seeing how it's happening. So being able to be on this side of it, finding the information, always having an answer for an officer or always having a way to find the answer for the officers is amazing. And I love that every day that I come to work, I at least make a difference to one person a day, at least, if not more, whether it's something super small like them calling in about their injured animal or them calling in because they found somebody not breathing. There's always something that I'm making a difference when I come to work, and that's why I love being here, and that's why I really can't live without dispatch, because it's a thrill. You come into work and you don't know what you're gonna get. The hardest part for me was the training, because you are learning a completely different language when you come into dispatch. You're learning cop language, the 10 codes, and that they mean real people words at the same time, but being able to incorporate those to make a faster sentence is amazing. And being able to familiarize myself with the hometown, because I grew up in St. George. So, growing up in St. George, it was quiet to me and, calm and everything like that. But you come into dispatch and you see all those things that are behind the scenes that are going on that, officers are doing to help make you feel like you're in a safe environment. It's kind of difficult because nobody's calling us on a good day, so we don't hear good things from the public because they're calling because it's, somebody's dying or they've just gotten into an accident or something. So to have the kind of people in here that we do, they are all very kind, they're supportive, they have your back, they will crack jokes with you to help lighten the mood so that way you can keep pulling forward. If you're having a hard time with a call, they help you even if they have not enough people to deal with the calls that are coming in. They will make it happen so that way you can go take a break and breathe for a little bit. So everybody is very involved, and everybody here is here because they want to be, not because they're forced to be. They are all here to make a difference just like you are. So they get it, you get it. Everybody's got each other's backs.
So my name's Jason. Been working at dispatch for about 9 months now. The training experience broken down into 2 sections. We have the radio training, and then we have call taking. So I started on radios, which I like playing with the walkie-talkie growing up, but this is a whole nother beast. I thought it was going to be a lot easier than it was. It turns out it's extremely difficult, really demanding. You have to be able to multitask. And that's kind of like my first impression of it. Was I was walking into dispatch like, this is gonna be a cakewalk. Like I'm gonna kill it. And then a couple months go by and I'm like, I feel like I'm still struggling. Luckily we have a lot of training, a lot of resources here. My trainers definitely got me through it. I think the volume of information that you have to give, we call it like information hot potato. So once it comes to you got to get it out to an officer or get out to a call taker for the information to be handled. For me, it's processing all that information that comes in at the same time. We'll get really busy, especially on St. George's channel, where we'll get domestic violence issues coming in or like drug calls, and then at the same time you have people making traffic stops, and you have to know where all of your officers are, what they're doing, who they're with, and at the same time, when you know who they're with, we're running them in the system, trying to figure out like everything we can for officer safety. I think what I enjoy the most is you never know what you're going to get when you come into work. I think I get bored really easy, and dispatch kind of mitigates being bored because there's always something to do, and every day is a little different. Some days we'll get like boring days where it's a little slower. You can just do traffic stops all day, and then some days you come in and there's days I've come into work and there's been a down aircraft. You're like, okay, like all hands on deck, or somebody's fleeing the city, going 1080. So it's definitely can go from 0 to 100 really quick. Sometimes you get to work, it's already at 100, and then it goes to 110. And so that's what I love about dispatches. You never know what you're going to get, and it's always a surprise.
I'm Janessa, and I have about almost 13 years of experience in dispatch itself. The things that drew me to the St. George Center itself is the pace. I enjoy kind of to stay busy throughout my shift. The diversity of the calls that we get here, I've noticed, is something that I've been drawn to for a while, is just to be able to learn new things and broaden the skills. I have only been here for about a month, and I absolutely love it. The team here has been amazing in helping me transfer my knowledge that I've had and being able to mold it into the way that they do things here.
My name is Joseph Sahaki. When I was working swing shift, you find that during the day you get a lot of typical calls like simple things, VIN inspections, citizen assist for stuff, and it's not a lot of really intense calls per se, but in the evenings, like that swing shift time, you get a lot of very kind of high energy calls, whether it be family fights or something very emergent going on. And I enjoy those calls, but I enjoy the mundane and the routine calls as well, because it keeps you on your toes and keeps you entertained and guessing as to what's going to be the next call and what's going on.
We have protocols for every single nature. So if it's a medical call, we follow a very strict guideline of questions that we ask. We always start with the address, the phone number, the patient's age and sex, and then if they're conscious and breathing. That's the same on every single medical call. Depending on what the nature of the medical issue is, we'll ask a series of questions that correlate with that medical issue. We can do everything from CPR, delivering babies, stroke diagnostic, administer aspirin for heart issues. So we have a protocol for literally everything that can possibly come up. If it's a law issue, we have a whole set of protocols that was built and created by just our center that we follow. But it's basically the same questions on every call. Who, what, where, when, and usually the why is not so important, but sometimes the why. So we ask the safety questions like if there's weapons involved, children present, drugs or alcohol, And we always get descriptions of the suspects or victims. We basically collect the same information on every call. Having a cooperative caller is very important. When the person is refusing to answer our questions or stay on the line with us, it makes it very frustrating because there is some really important information that we need, especially if it's involving a medical patient. We need to find out if that person is breathing and if that person needs any CPR administered. If they're bleeding, we need to control the bleeding, things like that, if it's a medical issue. And then if it's a safety issue, we need to ask these pertinent questions before officers arrive, or else they're not going to feel comfortable entering the scene, whatever it may be. So as far as fire calls, it's really important that the caller know where they're at, can provide us with, how close the fire is to a structure or a vehicle or any sort of flammable device. It's just really important that when somebody does call, that they know where they are, they can understand directions, and give us a detailed description of whatever questions are needed. When we answer a phone call, we put it into the system, and however it addresses, it goes to one of these, it'll be dispatched on one of these channels. So we have 3 different law channels. We've got Law 1, Law 2, and Law 3. They are occupied by various agencies in all of Washington County. And then we have 2 fire channels. We also have a whole collection of medical pagers and fire pagers. And we do all of the medical and fire paging for the entire county. And so depending on how the call is natured and addressed, it will go to the appropriate dispatcher who will use one of these radio channels to dispatch it.
Here's an amazing thing about this job that I never cease to be amazed by. Somebody calls 911 and asks for help. It doesn't matter their race, their religion, their ethnicity. It doesn't matter by what name they call God. None of that matters. They're in a desperate situation where suddenly, and tragically often, they need help. And you're answering the phone, and you're all they've got. And with the resources that you have with you, with the training that we will give you, and the people that stand behind us, the officers, the deputies, the troopers, the firefighters, more often than not, we can bring about a satisfactory resolution to that. And the first step is always this: what is the address of your emergency? It's us answering the phone to a complete stranger and doing something that few can do, that's rewarding as all heck.